The morning was so still I could hear the whisper of the cottonwoods swaying behind the barn. My coffee was steaming in my hand, and I was half thinking about patching the old fence by the creek when the crunch of tires on gravel snapped me out of it. I leaned toward the kitchen window and saw her Margaret, the queen of the Pine Vyew Estates HOA, standing in her golf cart like she just claimed my driveway as her personal empire. She had a clipboard in one hand, a tablet in the other, and a posse of nervous-looking neighbors trailing behind her. I stepped onto the porch, flannel shirt half-buttoned, and gave her a nod. "Morning," I said, keeping it civil. She didn't nod back. Her nose wrinkled like the smell of fresh hay was a personal insult. Without a word, she launched into a list of so-called violations: crumbling barn walls, illegal livestock pens, unapproved fencing wire, and of course, the disturbance caused by my rooster, Hank. "You mean Hank?" I asked, glancing toward the coop. "He's been crowing here since you were in pigtails." Her eyes narrowed. "The rooster crows at dawn. It disrupts yoga sessions." I couldn't help it, I laughed. "Lady, this is Harper's Hollow. My great-grandfather built this house in 1940. We were here before your cul-de-sac was a gleam in a developer's eye." She thrust a laminated map at me, pointing to a dotted line. "As of the 2023 neighborhood expansion, your property falls under Pine Vyew's jurisdiction." I took the map, squinted, and handed it back. "That line might cover your new clubhouse, but this land? Deeded when Truman was in office. You've got no claim here." She waved me off like I was a kid spinning fairy tales. "That's not how property law works, Mr. Grayson." Before I could fire back, she gestured to a twitchy guy in khakis who handed me an envelope. Inside was an EVY tie-in notice, bold as brass. "You have 30 days to vacate," she said, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. I stared at her. "You can't EVYCT me from my own land." She smirked. "The sheriff will be in touch." I didn't argue. I just walked inside, poured another coffee, and let the door slam behind me. Margaret was either bluffing or dangerously deluded, and I wasn't sure which was worse. 3 days later, Sheriff Daniels rolled up in his cruiser, looking like he'd rather be fishing. He handed me the same EVY tie-in notice and scratched his neck. "She really went and did it," I muttered, scanning the paper. "Seems so," he said. "But I gotta follow orders, Tom. She's claiming municipal compliance." I shook my head. "You know this ranch isn't under her thumb, right?" He nodded, but his hands were tied. So I went inside, shoved aside the old books in the den, and opened the iron safe my grandfather bolted to the wall in '62. Inside was the original deed, yellowed but intact, the Grayson family seal pressed into faded wax. I handed it to Daniels. He read it slowly, his eyebrows climbing as he took in the property lines, the historical exemptions, the clauses carving Harper's Hollow out of every jurisdiction but state and federal. "Well, damn," he said finally. Margaret, perched in her golf cart, stood when she saw his face change. "What's wrong?" she snapped. Daniels turned to her. "Ma'am, you've made a hell of a mistake." Her voice cracked. "Mistake? That paper's ancient." He folded the deed. "Notarized and binding. This land's in a family trust since '40. You can't EVYCT what he owns." Margaret's face went red as a raw beet. She sputtered about county appeals, but Daniels cut her off. "Ma'am, you need to leave his property. Now." She sped off, fist shaking out the cart's window like a cartoon VY lane. I turned to Daniels. "Want some eggs?" He grinned. "Hell yeah." As we walked to the coop, I knew this was just the opening shot. Margaret wasn't the type to quit, and Harper's Hollow was about to become a battlefield. The next morning, I caught her parked on the road, filming my goat Daisy with her phone. I raised my mug in a mock toast. She didn't wave back. By noon, a woman in a stiff pantsuit showed up, clipboard clutched like a shield. She introduced herself as Claire from the county zoning board, rattling off complaints about noise, smells, and unauthorized animals. I let her talk, then said, "Come with me." I led her past the barn to the old fence line, where iron markers from 1940 still stood. I showed her the county maps, the aerial photos, the red stamp zoning overlay pro-vying the HOA's reach ended well before my land. Claire snapped pictures, scribbled notes, and sighed. "This'll take time to process." I nodded. "Margaret doesn't get that." Claire's lips twitched. Off the record, she's not used to hearing no. 2 days later, Margaret was back, this time with a surveyor and a measuring wheel. "We're reassessing the property line," she shouted from the gate. "Good luck rewriting history," I called back. That night, I had dinner with my buddy Sam, the town historian. He nearly choked on his cornbread when I told him about Margaret's antics. "She can't redraw what's set in stone," he said, handing me a folder of old maps, clippings, and a photo of my grandfather shaking hands with the mayor in '54. "This'll make her look foolish." The next day, while fixing the south fence, my dog Rusty started barking and bolted into the brush. I followed, expecting a snake, but instead found a rusted metal ring half buried in the dirt. I pulled, and it opened a hatch to an underground bunker. Inside were stone walls, crates, and a desk stacked with folders, land records, blueprints, legal agreements from the Prohibition era. One document was a Bombshell Township contract exempting Harper's Hollow from any housing authority annexation due to its agricultural legacy. I called Sam. He showed up with coffee and a grin. "You just found the Holy Grail, Tom." I called Claire and told her I had new EVY Denke. She arrived the next day with 2 officials and a scanner. They spent hours poring over the files, whistling at each new find. Claire shook my hand. "This is ironclad. Your ranch was never under Pine VYEU's control." I asked if Margaret could still push. "She can try," Claire said, "but she's got no ground." I offered them eggs. They took them. As they left, I saw Margaret watching through binoculars. Good. Let her see. 2 days later, the HOA called an emergency meeting at their fancy clubhouse. I wouldn't have gone, but a note slipped under my gate changed my mind. It was from Nate, an HOA board member who'd always been decent. "Margaret's planning something big," it read. "Bring the files." I showed up in a clean shirt, carrying the bunker documents, and Claire's email confirming my exemption. The room hushed as I walked in. Margaret stood at the front, microphone clipped to her blazer, smiling like I was a bug she was about to squash. "Our guest of interest," she said, nodding at me. I didn't bite. I just opened my folder and waited. She launched into a speech about community standards, flashing slides of my goats, and Hank like they were crime scene EVY Denke. Then she dropped her bomb. "This IndVY duo refuses to comply. We propose a vote to demand county enforcement for his removal." Nate stood. "Before we vote, everyone needs to see this." He took my documents and laid them out. "These prove Harper's Hollow predates Pine VYEW and is exempt from HOA rules, as confirmed in 1940, 63, 87, and 2003. Margaret's smile froze. "That's irrelevant. We voted on the expansion." Nate didn't blink. "Votes don't trump zoning law." I placed Claire's email on the table, stating my ranch was an independent agricultural property. The room stirred. Margaret tried to pivot. "His animals lower our property values." A woman named Ellen stood. "My kids love those goats. Maybe if we treated him like a neighbor, he'd act like one." Another voice chimed in. "He gave us eggs last winter. Best I've had." Margaret's jaw dropped. She wasn't used to losing the room. Then Sarah, the HOA treasurer, held up a flash drive. "There are financial inconsistencies. Overdue law 10,000 in undocumented spending. Margaret's pergola, a spa trip labeled as an HOA retreat." The room exploded. Margaret screamed about conspiracies, but no one listened. The vote wasn't about might, was about her. They delayed action on my ranch and ordered an audit. Margaret stormed out, muttering about lawsuits. Residents shook my hand. A kid asked if Hank would be at the fair. "He's got star power," I said. Margaret didn't quit. 2 weeks later, a courthouse letter arrived, her CIVYL suit against me for nuisance and emotional distress. I called my cousin Lena, a lawyer who grew up on the ranch and ate legal battles for breakfast. She read the complaint on my porch, laughing. She's suing over goat smells? Bold. We spread the documents out, and Lena found gold. Margaret's house was built on land leased from my family in the 60s, with a clause requiring grace and trust approval for changes. In court, Margaret's lawyer painted me as a reckless cowboy. Lena stood calm as a summer lake, and laid out the ranch's history, the exemptions, and the clause tying Margaret's land to my family. She needed his permission for that pergola, Lena said. Margaret exploded. That's absurd. The judge silenced her. The ruling was swift. Margaret's claims were dismissed, and she was ordered to stop harassing me. We walked out into blinding sunlight, folks clapping. Lena grinned. Told you it'd be fun. Margaret was voted out as HOA president in a landslide. MOVYing trucks showed up at her house, but she wasn't. Leah VYH was redecorating, piling in statues and steel fence panels. A drone buzzed my barn, filming my animals. I held up a sign. Still my land. The next day, I put up fence posts with signs. Goat crossing, Hank's noise zone, and heritage site. The fight went viral. Schools VY cited. The news called. Lena got the ranch listed as a heritage site, and I mounted a plaque facing Margaret's house. One night Margaret knocked. She looked beaten, holding a box of market eggs. A gesture, she said. I took them. I've got chickens, you know. She nodded and left. I sat on the porch, stars blazing. The land didn't need defending, it needed remembering. And Margaret? She'd need reminding again.